The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to our SIGUCCS webinar. We're going to start in just another couple of minutes. Well, good afternoon and welcome to our webinar. My name is Lori Fox. I'm the chair of the executive committee of ACM SIGUCCS, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Giving More Effective Feedback by Ella Chopik. Before I turn over the reins to Ella, I want to give you just a few housekeeping items, and I have some SIGUCCS announcements. First of all, by default, everyone is muted. The session is being recorded today, and we will post it on the SIGUCCS YouTube channel next week. You can ask questions via the chat window, and I can either unmute you or read the question for you. Would everyone please say hello in the chat window so I know we are able to communicate with each other? Oh, and I see there's some questions too. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So our SIGUCCS webinar series, this is the second one for this year. We are planning 4 more in the next few months, and then we will be announcing the rest of the 2018 series. We're lucky to have 2 webinars in April, so keep an eye on those. And we have our webinars scheduled for Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I put the website up there. If you go to SIGUCCS.org, all of the information we're sharing with you today is available on our website. I wanted to remind you of a few important things. First of all, we are currently accepting nominations for our SIGUCCS Awards. The Penny Crane Award for Distinguished Service is our most prestigious award. It's typically awarded to one person each year, and it's for service to SIGUCCS and to our community at large. The Hall of Fame Award, the Hall of Fame is actually a virtual wall that's on our website where we honor people who have contributed to SIGUCCS. So I encourage you to look at the qualifications for these awards and nominate people that you know have made a difference in our organization and our careers. You also can nominate your own work for the SIGUCCS Communication Awards, and these are best of awards for different areas of excellence. I really like submitting my own work to the SIGUCCS Communication Awards because even if you don't win, you get great feedback from the judges about the materials that your department creates. And those entries are being accepted right now, and those are also awarded at the annual conference in the fall. Speaking of the SIGUCCS annual conference, it's coming up October 7th through 10th of this year in Orlando, Florida. We will actually be at one of the Disney resorts. The conference is still looking for volunteers. We're starting to ramp up our paper editing and reading, so we are looking for editors. And we also have some volunteer chair positions available, as well as an opportunity to volunteer at the conference, either at the registration desk or as a session chair. It is a great opportunity to give back to the conference, and many of the volunteer positions, especially the readers, you can do without having a commitment to attend the conference. And it's a great way to get a sneak peek at some of the presentations that are coming up for this fall. So do consider volunteering and participating in the conference. We've had a few great announcements recently about things that are happening at the conference. Our keynote speakers were introduced just a few weeks ago. Our opening keynote speaker is Jeffrey Salingo. He wrote a book about life after college, and he's going to be talking to us about similar topics. Geraldine Fitzpatrick is an ACM distinguished speaker. She's going to be sharing with us a talk titled A Short History of Human-Computer Interaction. We also have been revealing details about the pre-conference seminars. We have a great opportunity from the Disney Institute, who is going to share with us their famous customer service techniques behind the magic. The seminar will be led by Disney Institute employees who will talk about different aspects of customer service. And the information about that opportunity is available on the website, as well as the pre-conference seminar, Reaching for the Stars, Becoming an Inspirational Leader. 2 more pre-conference seminars have been arranged, and we're slowly releasing information about them. One is Project Management for Non-Project Managers, and a great workshop on culture over strategy and leading cultural change. Hotel and travel information is also available at the website. We'll be at the Disney's Coronado Springs Resort, which unfortunately does not feature the Tower Hotel, although that looks like a place that would be fun to stay. We have free transportation from the hotel with Disney's Magical Express and the bus service available to us in the resort. We also have information on our website about discount Disney park tickets. Disney offers, I think it's almost a 30% discount if you enter the park after the end of the conference day after 5 o'clock. So there's some great deals out there for that as well. I also want to encourage you to join SIGUCCS. Membership benefits include great conference discounts, big pre-conference seminar discounts. We've really been able to lower the cost of the pre-conference seminars for our members. Also, access to the ACM Digital Library that has all of the papers presented at SIGUCCS over the years, and the mentoring program, which is already underway for 2018. Can also stay in touch with SIGUCCS, join our email listserv, follow us in the Facebook community or on Twitter. So now I'm going to turn the microphone and presentation over to Ella. So Ella, you should have controls now. And I'm going to unmute you. Try talking again.
Hello.
There you go. All right. If you can hear Ella, if you would just raise your hand, that would just give me a quick... Okay, good. Ella, we are all set.
All right, great. Hello, and welcome to my webinar on giving more effective feedback and using feedback as a tool for professional development. Today we're going to discuss the value of feedback and also how to just like learn, also learn how to give and receive feedback in a professional and useful manner. And we'll do a little bit of discussing of self-assessment as well. So my name is Ella Chopik, as Lori said, and I work for the School of Education at UW-Madison, where I manage computer labs and our circulating iOS devices. It's one of the decentralized IT units on our campus. We also have a Department of Information Technology that does other, the more centralized units. So we're kind of a mix of centralized and decentralized. And before I was at the School of Ed, I was with the centralized unit, also managing a computer lab. I am from Madison originally, but I did not attend UW-Madison. I went to Alverno College in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I don't know if any of you have heard of Alverno, but it is a women's college that has taken a unique approach to an educational philosophy. When I was reading their brochures, when I was looking for college, it said that there were no desks, no tests, and no grades. And that really drew me in. I was like, wait, what? So I went to Alverno, where it's true, they do not have desks, tests, or grades, but instead they have this very comprehensive system of assessment and abilities, where each course you're working towards different abilities. There's 8 Alverno abilities, and they kind of scaffold you up the abilities chain. But a huge part of learning at Alverno is feedback. You get feedback from your peers, you get feedback from your professors, and you also learn how to give yourself feedback as well. So coming to UW-Madison, I found that feedback is not something that's commonly used, and I have seen the value of it as a learning tool and as a professional development tool. So I put together this presentation to kind of help share how feedback can be a benefit to us all. So the first thing we're going to do is actually a mindfulness meditation. If you give me a second, I should be able to get that going. Hopefully you guys can hear it. I didn't test this part. It looks like it's playing. Can you hear it or not?
I cannot hear it.
Okay. Maybe we will not do the mindfulness meditation, unfortunately.
Okay. Sue said she can't hear it either. Oh, that's too bad. Okay.
You can't hear it. Yeah, sorry about that, everyone.
I didn't even think about that. Okay.
Yeah, we should have tested it. That was my fault. I didn't think of it. So one reason that I was going to have us do a guided meditation is specifically a mindfulness meditation, is it kind of brings your attention to the inside, where you kind of start to notice things within yourself. You pay attention to your breath, you pay attention to how you're feeling, and you start to notice things that maybe you didn't notice before. And we'll talk later. I'll have to find a way to wrap it in without the experience of the mindfulness, but about how that kind of helps us with self-assessment, like the ability to sort of stop and listen to our internal weather. So we won't answer these questions, and we'll just get right on to the content. So a lot of times we'll hear our supervisor or our colleagues say, "Good job," but what is good about that job? I mean, it makes us feel good, like, hey, I did a good job, but at the same time, it doesn't give us an indication of what specifically was good. Good isn't something that you can improve on. So what can we do instead? Feedback isn't to make you feel good about yourself. Instead, it's to make you feel valued and to help you see what you can do well and what you can improve on, which, unless we can see both of those things, it's hard to develop as a skill set, because if you think you're doing fine, then you think you're doing fine. So feedback is not praise, but instead it's useful, actionable, concrete information tied to what's been observed. So through honing our feedback skills, we'll be able to provide our coworkers with information that they need to understand how to do better, as well as hopefully ourselves. So giving positive feedback. When we give positive feedback, it needs to be specific. So yesterday when you were working at the help desk, I noticed that you, again, timely, so that we know that what it was and when it was. Results oriented, so that we were trying to get to something, and non-trivial, so it's not just like, hey, it was great that you answered that email, when it was just part of their job to answer the email. But it helps when it's, something, or maybe there was something specific in the email that we need to discuss. But also, you should also get permission before you give feedback. I feel like that should probably be at the top of the list. When we sit someone down to give them feedback, we'll want to make sure that they're in a place to be ready to receive the feedback as well. And then we also need to discuss giving negative feedback as well, because not all feedback can be positive, unfortunately. So we want to make sure that it is behavior-based and not person-based. This is not something you did wrong. You are not wrong. You are not bad. Something you did could be improved. We need to keep our own emotions under control. This would be a place where the mindfulness meditation would have helped us a little, because you start to notice your own body's signals when you're starting to feel anxious or you're starting to feel distressed. You can kind of start to catch those things when you're paying attention to your own body. You should be doing it one-on-one, not while they're, in a group of their peers or in front of anyone, their boss, anything like that. Again, it should be specific and timely. And you're also going to want to listen to their side. If you listen to what they're saying with judgment, they're not going to listen to what you say openly either. And then you're going to want to create a plan at the end and kind of follow and establish a follow-up. Are there any questions so far about how we would give positive or negative feedback?
I'm watching for questions here, Ella. I don't see any.
Sure. Okay.
So far,
Great.
so good.
Okay, so for the next portion here, what we're going to do is we're going to read some scenarios and practice giving feedback in those scenarios, and hoping we'll get some audience participation here. So let's check out the first one. John and Marla are coworkers at a help desk. Marla has just spent 3 weeks cataloging, updating, and creating new documentation so all of the incoming students will be able to easily find current information. John is very impressed by Marla's initiative, dedication, and studiousness. He wants to let her know at their weekly group check-in. So John says, "Good job, Marla." What could have John said that would provide better feedback to Marla?
So while we think about that, a couple questions came in, and they are two questions.
Great.
So the first one is, does the feedback have to be negative? How about, quote, opportunities for improvement?
I think that is a good idea. It's not negative feedback. That's when you come into it with that mindset of negative feedback, you're going to come into it negatively. So kind of that growth mindset, right? Just like the question said, an opportunity for improvement feedback.
Okay. And Sue asked, are you suggesting we ask our employees for permission to give them feedback or just warn them?
That is also a good question. I would say a lot of the employee-employer relationship is providing feedback, and so a lot of times it just comes up naturally in discussion. But I know with my supervisor in the past, who probably had the best approach, was when there was like an important issue, when something had gone poorly and we needed to discuss it, she would open with, "Can I give you some feedback?" Because it would give me an opportunity to prepare myself mentally to move forward on discussing it with her, as well as give her the opportunity to let me know what is about to happen. So not all feedback I mean, most of our discussions with our employers are feedback, like you tell them this, they tell you that. But at the same time, if it's, especially when it's that growth opportunity feedback, it does help to let the person know that they're going to be receiving some information from you on how they could improve. Are there any other questions?
Ella, I'm sorry, I lost audio for a second there. Okay.
No, that's all right.
I also find too, just in my own experience, whether you're giving good feedback or bad feedback, I start in the same way. So that, because there's nothing more scary to me than the phrase, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And it's always followed by bad news, right? Okay. So I'm going to go through some of the suggestions to our scenario here, okay?
Okay, great.
So the first one is from Nick. He said, start with, "Marla, may I give you some feedback?" And when agreement is gained, say, "When you dedicate your update and create new documentation, incoming students are more easily able to find current information. Keep up the good work." Oh, and then he
Yeah,
said,
that was perfect.
yeah. Oh, "when you dedicate your time to update." I got you, Nick. I got you covered there.
Got it.
And Mo said that John could have told Marla why she did a good job, connect her efforts to the effect it has on students and how her work benefits the students' experience at the institution.
Yep, exactly.
Does
Nice work. Specific, timely,
yep.
results-based.
Anyone have any other? Okay.
All right, next scenario. Of course, my computer didn't respond right away, so I'm afraid if I push the button again, it's going to fly us past 2 screens here. Hello. Oh, there we go. I did miss one. There we are. All right. Susan and Savannah have been working on an LMS rollout team for months, and they've been working with faculty to recreate their courses in a new system. One day, at a meeting with a tenured faculty member, Savannah becomes flustered at the faculty's unwillingness to work with the new LMS, insisting the LMS be altered for their content, and Susanna then sits quietly, arms crossed and head down without contributing further to the meeting. After the meeting, Susan knows, obviously, she needs to speak to Savannah about her behavior. How and when are the best ways for her to do it, and what should she say?
Okay, we're looking for some ideas for feedback for Savannah.
This one's a little harder because it was in front of a client, of course, and it was definitely not good behavior.
Sure. So Nick recommends that the feedback be given in private, and he typically uses his weekly one-on-ones with his staff for feedback. But then he also said that sometimes a quick aside will work. Mo recommends asking Savannah about her side of the story.
That's a good idea because we clearly don't know what Savannah's going through here. She's seems to be overreacting in this scenario.
Dan recommended that Susan wait until they have one-on-one time and do it in private. Ask Savannah what bothered her about the interaction. Oh, people are really typing now. Okay, Kathy said, make sure the two of you are alone and in a quiet place. Give yourself time to cool off. I think that's important.
Yes.
Don't
wait.
wait.
I think the cool down time is is important in this one for sure.
Mm-hmm. Don't wait too long after the event to let her know what behaviors were not acceptable. And Sue said, do it immediately. Mention you need to give feedback. Empathize with her frustration, but say when you cross your arms and put your head down, it looked like you were no longer working cooperatively with our customer.
Yep, exactly. These all sound really great. I think like I said, the cool down period can be important. I can see the value of calling this one out right away, especially because it was in front of a client. If you can take the cool down period, or just say, or maybe right away say, you're putting your head down in there made it look like we weren't working as a team anymore. Let's discuss this at our next meeting, so that she kind of knew right away that something was going to be talked about. But
Right.
I think that's kind of a judgment call.
Right. I like what Gail also posted. Timing is everything. Find a private time. I would seek to understand about the meeting, specifically to know Savannah's side. Make sure you are not upset and that Savannah has recovered. Cover the behavior first. I think that's great too. You got to give Savannah time to calm down. She's not ready for feedback.
I would agree.
Good.
All right, and we've got one more scenario. You guys ready? Joe and Rosa work in a repair for their campus, and one day a student brings in a computer with a problem no one's ever seen before. Joe spends time researching the issue and testing the solutions until he's able to fix it. The student is overjoyed, and Rosa is grateful to Joe. What feedback should Rosa give Joe, and when should she give it?
People are still talking about your last scenario. I think that really
sure
for a lot of people.
Yeah, no problem.
I mean, people reaffirmed that Savannah should not have exhibited that behavior despite her feelings. And it's important to note that feedback must be given. Doing nothing sets a bad precedent.
Yes, definitely agree. Maybe in the feedback with Savannah, take some time to discuss ways she could have responded better.
Mm-hmm. Nick thinks in the student repair case, you would give the feedback after the student leaves and they're alone. And Sue said, give it soon after the fix. Tell him you are grateful he took the time needed to fix it and provide such good service to the customer. This kind of feedback could be given more publicly.
That's true. Sometimes people, especially in scenarios like this, like receiving public feedback. Sometimes people don't. So it's good in this type of scenario to know if your student workers are the kind, or any workers, are the kind that like to have it be called out in a meeting, or would prefer to have that type of recognition in private.
Mm-hmm. Dan said, assuming they are peers, Rosa can let Joe know what he did had a very positive impact on the customer and their reputation.
Yep, perfect.
Kathy Fletcher. Kathy, this is a great question. I wonder if Joe took too much time on this one and might have neglected other work to solve an interesting problem.
It's a good question. Then the feedback would be a little bit different.
Right.
Then she could mention,
Yeah. Nick wonders if Rosa is Joe's supervisor.
I mean, they could be. I just think that they were peers, actually.
Yep. Mo asked if Joe documented the fix.
Well, that's a good question. Joe should document the fix. Maybe Rosa should mention that. Like, I appreciate what you've done, and make sure to put all that in the KB or whatever.
Yep. Nick is sharing his peer feedback model, which I think is great. He said he typically says when you do X, the impact is Y, which I think is good for positive or negative. So very straightforward.
Definitely. Excellent. Those were excellent examples, everybody. All right, and now I'll give a couple seconds just to see if there's any more response to any of the scenarios. Otherwise, we're going to move on to receiving feedback.
Sure. Oh, he says when he's giving a mixed feedback, like good job, Joe, you should have done documentation, he uses and instead of but.
Oh, that's a good one.
Tricky. Okay, and that's all I see, Ella.
All right, so we'll talk a little bit now about receiving feedback ourselves, because receiving feedback is as important as giving feedback, and it's much harder. I went to Alverno, like I said, and almost your whole first semester you spend, and maybe longer, becoming comfortable with the idea of your peers giving you feedback and your instructors giving you feedback. And the way we do it at Alverno is, say, because there's no tests, so you'll do a presentation, 10, 15-minute presentation, and then you'll hear from your peers what you did well and what you didn't do well. And it's kind of a good learning experience to see how you yourself receive feedback, how you process it, and kind of like learning how to take it into yourself and see what you can do next. I have a story more recently. I was at work. This was about last spring, I'd say. I had been working on a podcast project, and one of my coworkers who had been helping and had definitely more experience in the arena than I had, made a very common suggestion, like you should include a tagline at the end or something. It was something very basic, but I did not respond well. I kind of shut down and turned away and was like, no, it's fine, and left the meeting. Fortunately, my supervisor came later and was like, I think we should talk about what happened there. And I was able to kind of process why I didn't want to hear his feedback at the time. Does anybody out there have experiences with doing a bad job of receiving not the best feedback? The opportunity for growth feedback?
Nick is impressed with your honesty. Sue says she gets a little defensive at times.
It's hard not to, especially when you feel like you've been doing something really well, or like you've put a lot of yourself into it. I think that was kind of my issue in that scenario. I really felt like, no, I did this and it's fine. All right, so let's talk about what I could have done better and what everyone can do to receive kind of that opportunity for growth feedback. So be a good listener for yourself. So we talked about when you're giving the feedback to be a good listener, but also when you're receiving the feedback, you need to be a good listener. They're not telling you to be mean to you. They're telling you to try and help you. So it is to your advantage to try and let go of the negative defensiveness. It's later on my list is try to control defensiveness. So that's why I'm trying not to say it now, but that's what you're supposed, like let go of your expectations and just listen to what they're saying. Ask for examples so that you can see exactly what they're talking about. Because sometimes someone will come to you and they'll say, there's something you're doing that's not helpful. And like, that's not helpful either. There's something you're doing that's not helpful. So summarize back what you hear. This is kind of some good listener skills in general. Like, I'm hearing that you think that I could be kinder to our customers when they come in. Is that what you are saying? Try to suspend your judgment. It's like the first thing our brains want to do is like race to the answer and race to the next thing, or like, I was doing that because this, or you're just saying that because of that, but instead try just to wait. Wait and see where they're going. Try to see what you can be taking away. Talk to other people later, and this is not in the moment, but if it's something that you're having a really hard time kind of seeing or understanding, talk to other people. It is possible that whoever gave you the feedback doesn't have the best feedback for you, or isn't really trying to help you. I mean, we want to believe that everyone has our best interests, but they don't always. So it's good to talk to other people and get their opinions as well. And maybe they'll say, oh yeah, you definitely do that. Or maybe they'll say, I have not seen that. Maybe next time you go back, you can get more specific examples. Like we talked about, try to control defensiveness. Let the person who gave you that feedback know that you appreciate it. And then you can also tell them that you'll reflect on it and get back to them. That helps with the suspending judgment. Like, you don't have to respond right away. You can say, I appreciate you sharing this information with me. I'm going to take some time to reflect on this, and let's talk about it another time. It's kind of one of those things that helps us override the wanting to judge and wanting to be defensive, because once we're away from that, once we've noticed our stress response, we can kind of slow down and think it through while we're not in that moment of intensity.
So Ella, you've got a few comments from the start of this slide that I think are good for here.
Okay.
One person said
Sure.
once they started working for leaders who they trust, it's easier for them to receive feedback. Someone else posted that they find people indicate that they're trying to say something, but then they're so uncomfortable, they're not clear. And if you lean in to try to find out more, they shut down. That's frustrating. So I think sometimes, I know if people are giving you feedback and they're not good at giving feedback, it's really hard to kick into some of these bad responses. And
Yes.
Someone else says that sometimes they feel hurt when they get feedback, like in an annual review, but things haven't been brought up throughout the year. And I think that has happened to all of us.
Yeah, I think that's a very important one. And if you have the opportunity to give feedback back, you can say, in the next year, let's work to discuss these issues as they arise, rather than all at once at the end. Because that's going to help. It's going to help everyone. It's going to help you. It's going to help your department. It's going to help the end user. It's overall going to be a good thing if we're working out the feedback that we're getting in the long term, or like in the immediate time, and not just wait until the end of the year. With the people who aren't good at giving us feedback, that is a hard one, because we can't change other people's behavior. We can try and ask questions or ask for examples, and if they do shut down, maybe try again at a different time if that's any better. Like, I'd really like to understand what you're telling me, but right now I'm a little confused. Let's talk about this later. Or, next time you see me doing this behavior or whatever it is, can you stop and point it out to me? Something along those lines might be helpful in managing people who aren't as good at giving us feedback.
Okay, here's a great question for you. How could you solicit meaningful feedback from a supervisor who seems to be too impressed with how good of a job you're doing? This person always wants to do better, but they're not getting any suggestions or tweaks from their manager. And then she said, I wonder if it's related to growing up with an overly critical mother. Like, I'm not comfortable in the absence of critique, which I love that. But
yeah,
how could you solicit feedback for improvement when you just get the pat on the head, good job?
I think I would approach the person with kind of I'd like I'd like to discuss some of the specific things you think I did well on this, or that, this project that I've just completed, I really appreciate that you are pleased with it. Can you give me some examples of things that you like within it, as well as anything specific that I could have done better? And they may not be comfortable with giving you the what you could have done better. Maybe they don't think there was anything you could have done better, which is hard to work around. But if starting at the things that you did well is one place, another is kind of starting on that self-assessment, which I think we are going to talk a little bit about next. Because sometimes sometimes you're not going to be able to get what you want out of other people. You can try. I think the most specific questions, the better. Otherwise, it's not going to bring us back to mindfulness, because we couldn't do our mindfulness, but that's all right. We're not going to reflect on it. Okay, we're just going to skip that whole slide. All right, so one benefit to mindfulness, and something that is important for self-assessment, is this self-awareness. So if you kind of if you yourself feel like there was something you could have done better, that's where, instead of looking to someone else, you're going to want to look to yourself. Like, what part of this project that I just completed could I have done better on? It's too bad the meditation didn't work. It kind of gives you, mindfulness gives you this barometer on internal weather, where you can tell when you're starting to feel distressed. You can tell when you need to take a break from a discussion, when now is not a good time to give or receive feedback. And that can help you notice and manage reactions. So learning to look at ourselves is kind of the third piece of this skill. We can get feedback from those above us, we can get feedback from those around us, but we also need to start to find a way to reflect on our own work. And the two kind of basic questions are, what did I do well on this? And what could I have done better? Like, what would make me feel better about myself on this piece of paper, or this project, or whatever? Or what could have been more, I'm not sure, I'm sorry.
Ella, Sue also had a good suggestion that you could draw up a list of your main responsibilities and ask for feedback on each specific thing, and ask if there's anything else you should know about your performance or how you're viewed by others. So taking a little bit of extra responsibility if you're in a supervisory position where your supervisor is not giving you enough feedback.
Yes, that would be great. Well, that is pretty much the end of my webinar. Are there any questions or anything else anyone would like to talk about?
Nick asks if you have any luck in encouraging your employees or coworkers to pick up your techniques. He says he has some employees who seem reluctant to participate in feedback.
Yes, it is. There's always people who are reluctant. I do have people who are like that. Part of it is just the practice. It's just practice makes perfect. If you could do sort of, I know everybody loves role playing, right? But like a role playing scenario type meeting where people could get an experience. I think that the more practice we have with something, the more comfortable it becomes. And that's both the giving and the receiving ends as well.
Sure. Dan asks if you could share the link to the mindfulness meditation.
Yes, absolutely.
So Ella, if you want to get that to me, I can send it to the attendees. Or
Yep,
you could
I will
post it maybe on your screen.
Yeah. Let me see. I don't know that I have a link, but I will get it to you.
Okay. How do we deal with supervisors who are not enlightened in these techniques? Peers are one thing, but reporting to someone is a different thing.
That's very, very true. I think one is to ask the right questions. So kind of ask them questions that'll help you get what you need. And then two is the self-assessment piece, where you kind of take a step back from what they've told you or what they are not telling you, and think if you can fill in those gaps yourself.
Sure. Kathy says that they have an employee recognition program where coworkers write nominations for others to win quarterly awards. And she thinks that the practice of writing these nominations could be related to practicing positive feedback. That's a great idea, Kathy.
Yeah, definitely.
Sue, I'm sorry, I'm chuckling because I had this same thing happen to me. We have to do a self-assessment here at her college as part of the performance evaluation. And her staff seem to rate themselves as almost perfect in their self-assessment, even when that's not accurate. Any thoughts about that?
I think I would look at how the questions are worded and see if they can be tweaked to encourage more critical thinking. I mean, I don't know what the questions are, but sometimes the way we present things can help people think in different pathways. And so maybe if we could tweak the questions, we can get them to think more critically about themselves.
And Nick has a question about meditation. He wonders if you recommend a particular frequency for meditation, and do you incorporate it into your workday?
I'm not I'll be honest, I'm not currently practicing mindfulness, but I would say about 2 years or a year and a half to 2 years, and I was doing it 3-ish times a week, 3 to 5 times a week for 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how much I wanted to. And I would say that doing that kind of changed the structure of my brain. Like, I had a lot of anxiety prior to that point that I don't really experience in the same way anymore. So I think 3 to 5 times a week for 5 to 10 minutes is good. That's how much I would recommend.
And Nick,
I like to.
I was just going to say, Nick agrees with you. He said, I'd like to agree with you on the value of mindfulness meditation. I've seen a great value in it for almost everything I do, from controlling what and when I eat to keeping myself focused at my desk. Would you agree that the value of meditation is that it's an exercise in refocusing yourself? Oh, and he pairs it with his workouts. Nick is an overachiever.
Yeah, I found that it was really valuable just in kind of definitely like the refocus and the like connection with the rest of the day and week and life, because you start to respond to the world differently once you've practiced enough, where you can catch yourself getting frustrated a lot quicker. And then you don't need to be caught up in the feelings. You can kind of learn how to move past them. And it's not something that consciously happened to me. It was just something that did happen.
Well, Ella, I want to thank you for sharing your presentation with us today. I know that
Sure.
I coerced you into doing this because it was one of my favorites at the conference last year. Everyone, thank you also for attending. If you want to review any of it, it will be available on the SIGUCCS YouTube channel next week. And I think we're going to sign off from here. Everybody have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.